Hi everybody, Mr. Bomb Builder here. I want to talk to you today about a company called Component.co.uk. They're local to me-ish. They're based in Rachib, which is Bethesda. I usually go there for my batteries and things, and they recently helped me out a bit. I bought from them 2 lithium ferrite batteries at 1600 milliamps, a charger and a Mosfet. Now, I've never used a Mosfet before in my life. I'd ordered an AIRFET and got sick of waiting for it, so when I seen that they had them, I bought one. And I thought I should make a review about it, because the AIRFET arrived during the day that I'd gotten impatient and bought it. So when I got home, I had an AIRFET and a Mosfet that they'd given me. The Mosfet that they'd given me had lengths of wire about 6 or 8 inches long, and they were long enough to do the whole installation without trimming or splicing. I don't like splicing very much, it's a bit of a hassle to do. The AIRFET came with 2 inches of wire. The thing that was different about this to an AIRFET was all the wires were there to do the job. Rather than having, I don't know what they call the installation, but like running a wire to your trigger switch and then your power switch that goes to your motor to the same switch as well. So you've got a little line that goes to the trigger and then basically a junction that comes off of the second pole to the motor. So then that's where it gets its trigger signal from. The Mosfet I bought from Component.uk had the 2 signal wires separately to the 2 motor wires. So that all in all this had 6 wires, 2 for the battery, 2 for the motor and 2 for trigger switches. I installed it over the AIRFET because of the simplicity of this. You can't go wrong with 2 wires going to a trigger. You can't go wrong with 2 wires going to a motor. You can't go wrong with 2 wires going to the batteries, all clearly marked as negative, positive. The particular one I bought came with a little piece of paper. It said on the piece of paper to follow the instructions as normal, replacing a blue wire with a yellow one, which is fair enough if you used up the wires in manufacturing, and they put the little card there to tell you exactly what to do. The AIRFET on the other hand came with really short wires, so you had to do your own splicing and a small little tag to mark which side your battery was supposed to be connected. I didn't like that very much. It needs to be idiot proof, and the Mosfet that they provided was extremely idiot proof. I did a weekend, so this weekend I've been playing continuously with my weapon. On Saturday I did a few little games with some freshers who'd recently come into the area and they wanted to try airsoft, so it was about 2,000 rounds during that day, and then I went and rocked this camera to be press. And then on Sunday I hammered it. I gave everything I could through that Mosfet and it took it. No sweat. My stock tube is, you know, a tank stock tube, and it's not very thick. It didn't get hot or anything, and when I did eventually get around to changing the batteries, the Tamiya connectors were cool as well. So they're doing the job really well. The Mosfet didn't get hot. I could feel it if it did get hot, because it's right here, basically on a big piece of metal. It acts a bit as a heat sink for it. At one point during the day I'd gotten very excitable and I pulled my trigger all the way back. My trigger isn't a hair trigger, so it was constantly in contact even though I was trying to make bursts with it. I think I gave the FET, by accident, not intentionally, a 60-second full-on burst of ammunition non-stop, and it didn't fail or anything. Surprisingly enough, usually quite a few FETs, it's enough to kill them doing that. A lot of them survive, but it causes damage, and it's not really recommended to do for the health of your motor and things. The lithium ferrite batteries come in a neat little case with bubble wrap. And I think this is really handy. It makes it easy to pack them, you know they're safe in there. So that's how my lithium ferrites came. 9.9 volts. All in all, I'm very happy with Component.co.uk. Staff know what they're talking about, so if you ask them, if they don't know, they refer you to the other staff members who do know, and you can't ask for much more than that. As well as that, with them being based in the UK, you don't get the sorry, me no speak English. but I really do recommend them, and I do recommend AIRFET as well. It's a non-braked one. It just does what it says on the tin. Gives you power, turns off the power. I will continue to hammer it really, because I usually do. I use my guns till they break and then repair something. I'll try and keep a log of how many rounds I've got put through it and long bursts and things, but otherwise I was very impressed, and the installation wasn't too bad. The only thing I will say about the installation was because of the thickness of the wires that they used, which was 16 AWG, I had to run the 2 trigger wires around the outside of the gearbox casing, which is no big deal because it runs down the side of the gun quite happily. The nice thin wires. The thicker wires go through the casing into your motors, obviously. I would have done a video on the installation, but I knew I might have problems, which was the rerouting of the wires around the outside of the case, and that could have been predicted until I was actually getting around to it. So that's my review over it. I'm very impressed with it. It took a beating, it's still alive now, and I recommend componentshop.co.uk to anybody. Hello again. This is a little second part to the review itself, so I'm just going to look quickly at the Mosfet. So I managed to tuck this little sucker away right there, and that's the whole thing. From the front of my finger to just there is the Mosfet. These 2 little loops here are the slack ends of the trigger wires, and that's my battery terminal, obviously. This is the G&G Wasp that's based on the G&G combat machines. The most noticeable difference I got from it using the 9.99 volt batteries, they got slightly more current dump than nickel metal hydrides, and otherwise it would work the same. I get the same trigger response and things, but the Mosfet makes it a little bit more perky. So yeah, pretty good combination. So it's like you're not trying to fry anything with 11.1 lipos. A lot of people like to kick the shit out of their weapons with them. There's not really... I don't see much of a point in going 11.1. The 9.9s seem to do the job just good enough. I'll see what happens when I switch to some lower ratio gears in the future, but otherwise that's the Mosfet. I installed it so that the trigger wires run down the outside of the gearbox, and the motor wires obviously run down the normal routes inside it. So my trigger wires just below my body pin here run up, along, and then into the front of the gearbox. There you go, you can see them right at the back of my mag well. Just about, methinks. There you go, you can see them right above my fingernail there. Those are my 2 trigger lines, or signal lines, as people who do work with electronics a lot. Your 2 signals go to the trigger, which will then set off the Mosfet to turn the gearbox over.